Alright then, so the last thing I want to show you in this chapter is how to submit this form and then also how to react to that submit event when it occurs. Now in practice, if you create a real project, then what you do at this point is to take all of that data on submission and send it to a database maybe to save. But since we've not worked with databases yet, we're not going to do that. And instead what we'll do is maybe just a bit of custom validation for the password field to make sure it's long enough. And then we could output an error if it's not long enough. And then also with the rest of the data, just log it to the console. So I just want to show you the basics of how to set up this submit event and handle it. So to begin with, we need to create a button at the bottom of the form. Let's do that. And I'm going to surround this button in a div with a class of submit. And the only reason I'm doing this is so I can apply some CSS styles to it in a minute. Inside that we need a button, and I'm going to say create an account inside it. Now if we take a look at this, it probably looks pants. Yes it does. So let's apply some styles to it. I'm just going to paste these at the bottom of the style tag, and I got these from my repo, which you can get as well. The background of the button is going to be blue, no border, a bit of padding and margin to the top. The colour of the text is white and the border radius is 20 pixels to soften up the corners. The submit div that surrounds the button says text align is centre, and that's so the button inside it will be aligned in the centre of the form. So let's save that and preview, and that looks a lot better. Now, whenever we have a button inside a form, if we were to click on that button, it would fire a submit event on the form. That is the normal behavior of HTML forms, nothing to do with Vue whatsoever. So if I was to enter in a load of junk in here, just so we can test this out and accept the terms and conditions, if I click create an account, that would fire a submit event. So check this out. The normal behavior in HTML is to refresh the page when that happens. And since it refreshes, these go back to blank fields. So instead of this, what I'd like to do is react to this submit event in Vue and override that default behavior so that I can do something different. So the way I'm going to do this is by attaching a submit event to the form. Now you might be thinking, why not just attach a click event to the button? And you could do that, but the actual event that occurs is the form being submitted. So I'm going to use that submit event instead. So we can take our form right here and we can attach a submit event to it, much like we attach events to other things using the @ symbol. So I'll say @submit and set it equal to a function. I'm going to call this function handle submit, but you can call it what you want, it really doesn't matter. And we need to create that function down at the bottom over here inside methods, handle submit. Now if we wanted to, we could take in the event object, but I don't need it, so I won't do. Now I'm going to console.log over here, form submitted, so we can see when this happens. Now there is still a problem with this. And the problem is that we're still not overriding the default behavior of the browser. Yes, we're saying we want to fire a function when the form is submitted, but we're not telling the form that, look, I want you to prevent the default action of refreshing the page when you're submitted. And I'll demo that. If we open up the console over here and clear that, I'm going to type in a load of stuff just to test this, password, and then accept the terms. Notice the log will flash up very quickly over here, but then the page will refresh. Create an account, and we saw that message very quickly before the page refreshed. So it's firing this function, which is good, but we still need to say, look, prevent the default action of the form being submitted. Do not reload the page. And the way we do that in Vue is by attaching an event modifier to the submit event. That event modifier is prevent, and that prevents the default action of the form being submitted. So now if I try this, I'm going to come over here again and enter in a load of different details like so, and then down here create an account, and we see form submitted and the page does not reload. So that's what we need to do. Now, like I said, normally inside this function down here, what we'd do is we'd check all the data that we have on the user that they've entered and then submit it to a database. We're not going to do that because we've not worked with databases yet. Instead, what I'm going to do now is a little bit of validation to check the password field and also just log all the details out to the console. So then let's get rid of this, and first of all let's do a little bit of validation on the password. So validate password. So I want to check to make sure that the password length is over 5 characters. If it's not, then I'm going to create an error and output that error in the template. So first of all, I'm going to create a password error property, which I've already done right here inside our data. And that's an empty string to begin with. And if the password length is not over 5, I'm going to update this. Now I could use an if check to say, look, if this.password, which is where we're storing the password, is not over 5, then update this with an error. But instead, I'm going to use a ternary operator just to be a bit different. And I'm going to say this.password error is equal to this.password.length is over 5, question mark. And then the way a ternary operator works is that we have a statement that we evaluate, and then we do a question mark, and then we have two values. The left value is going to be if this is true. The right value is going to be if this is false. And then whatever value we choose is assigned to the password error. So for example, if this is true and the password length is over 5, then the error is going to be just an empty string because we don't need an error. Then we do a colon and we say what will the value be if this is false. So let's say in this case, the password must be at least 6 cars long. That's all we need to do. Now I'm just going to format this a bit better by adding this to the next line so it doesn't scoot off over to the right. Okay, so now we're updating this password error based on the password length. If it's over 5, then the error is still a blank string. If it's not over 5, then the password error will become this string right here. Okay, so now what we can do is we can output this error up in the template. And we'll do that below the password field over here. Now we only want to output this error if password error has a value. So we'll say div and then v_if is equal to password error. Now that's going to be false if it's an empty string, so we won't output it then, and it's going to be true if it's not an empty string, in which case we will output it. So let's output there, password error, like so. And I'm also going to give this a class equal to error, just so we can style it a little bit in a second. Now let's try this out. If I enter in some kind of email, and then I enter in a password that's only 3 characters long, and then accept, watch the error. See, password must be at least 6 characters long. If I change this to be more than 5 characters long and create an account, the error goes, because at that point down here we set the error back to an empty string. Okay, so let's just add in a little style for the error at the bottom down here. I'm going to copy this from my course files again and paste it in right at the bottom, and we can see the color is this red color. We give it a bit of margin at the top, we'll reduce the font size and make it bold. So let's just see that in action. If I reduce this to a few characters, create an account, and this is the error now. Awesome. Okay, so we've done a little bit of validation, which is what we might do inside a submit handler like this. We probably do something a little more complex than this and check the other fields as well. But this is just an example of what we can do inside this handler. So now what I'd like to do is gather up all of the information and output it to the console. But I only want to do this if there's not an error. So let's say if, and then we need exclamation mark, this.password error. So this is only going to fire code if there is no error, because we have this in front of it. And inside here, I'm just going to log out all of the different values that we have. So I'm going to paste these logs in so you don't have to watch me type it out. So we're outputting the email, the password, the role, the skills, and the terms. So let's check this out and make sure everything works. Add in an email. I'm going to say mario@yahoo.co.uk. Password, load of old characters, don't know what I'm typing. And then we'll say web developer skills, HTML, and CSS, and view. And then let's accept the terms and create an account. And we see all of this information over here. Awesome. Now, like I said, in the future, we will take all of this information and probably do something like send it to a database or use an authentication service to sign that user up. But for now, this will do. I just wanted to show you how to use forms in Vue.js.